I want to start with the case of a true company. The company is called High Class New York. And this company you could call if you wanted a model who would show up at your hotel room to celebrate an occasion. Well, not surprisingly, this was actually a cover for a prostitution ring. This company, High Class New York, was actually sending prostitutes to very wealthy, elite New York businessmen who would pay often $10,000 a night. And ultimately, in the summer of 2011, this ring was busted by the authorities. And shown on the screen are the 17 people who were indicted. You'll see that the first group of people who were indicted were the owners. That's very sensible. And the next group of people who were indicted were the managers and operators, people who were doing the day-to-day business. But you can see there's two individuals who don't have a label on their faces. These two individuals are investors. High Class New York was funded by two investors, F.M. Gorelick and Yakov Maestrovich. Each put in $700,000 of their own capital and were paid with interest. Both of them were indicted alongside the owners and operators. In the government's eyes, the investors were as culpable as the owners and operators, which raises a very interesting ethical and philosophical question. Is it legitimate? Was it legitimate for the government to indict these men alongside the owners and operators, given that they were simply passive investors? So with that backdrop, let's consider the following company, another true story, another real company. This company is in the S&P 500, and therefore many people own this company through mutual funds and through ETFs. The company sells over $25 billion annually in cigarettes. It pays a very juicy 5.1% dividend each year. While this company is perfectly legal, is it legitimate for us to invest in such a company and reap such profits? And I hope that you can see the parallel between this company and the previous company. Although this one is legally operated, it may conflict with our values, and it certainly may conflict with our values, particularly if you have a faith-based perspective and you have objections to this kind of a product that is fundamentally about slavery and medical harm and bondage and addiction. So this takes us back to a very fundamental question that we need to have clear in our mind. The question is simply, what is the true purpose of investing? The true purpose of investing is very simple. It is to supply capital to business. We don't need to overthink this. In exchange for that investment, the investor receives ownership in that company, some percentage of ownership in that company, as well as rights to any profits and growth. But as we saw in the first example of High Class New York, and we would make the case in the second example as well, that ownership confers to the investor ethical responsibility for the activities of the company. I want to take us back now really to thousands of years, and we're going to a very ancient book. This is the book of Proverbs, which is a book in the Bible. And this particular passage is from the very first chapter of the book of Proverbs. It says, "My son, if sinful men entice you, do not give in to them. If they say, 'Come along with us,' let's lie in wait for innocent blood. Let's ambush some harmless soul. Let's swallow them alive like the grave, and whole like those who go down to the pit. We will get all sorts of valuable things and fill our houses with plunder. Cast lots with us. We will all share the purse. My son, do not go along with them. Do not set foot on their paths, for their feet rush into evil. They are swift to shed blood. How useless to spread a net where every bird can see it. These men lie in wait for their own blood. They ambush only themselves. Such are the paths of all who go after ill-gotten gain. It takes away the life of those who get it." That's Proverbs chapter 1, verses 10 to 19. The first observation that I'd like to make is to notice that culpability here is contemplated even for scenarios of mere financial participation. The passage reads, "Cast lots with us," which basically means something like, put your money in with us. We will all share in the purse. There's some kind of common purse that this business venture is drawing from. And what is fascinating about this is the author of Proverbs implores the son, implores the daughter to avoid these bad profits. It's phrased in this passage as ill-gotten gains, which are profits that are made at the expense of others, profits that come from some activity that results in harm towards others. And in contrast, the biblical narrative calls us to derive our profits and our livelihood from good profits, from activities that are really the byproduct of serving well the needs of others. So thousands of years ago, the author of Proverbs was making a very simple but very profound statement that we need to be careful to not join into these schemes that are hatched by people that are about ill-gotten gain, bad profits, where there may be some kind of a common purse. Now, in fact, if you think about it, a mutual fund is in some sense a common purse where there's one pool of capital and the fund manager allocates out of that to various companies. And so we, as the wise son or the wise daughter, seek to avoid these schemes of bad profit in favor of the opportunities for good profit. Now, why is it hard to see this ownership today? Why has this question been so fundamentally obscured? Well, I think most of us, if we think about it, would agree that investing has long been divorced from this original and most basic purpose of simply supplying capital to support businesses. Instead, we see that most investors are trying to profit from the market rather than from any productive and intrinsic value of the underlying companies. People even forget sometimes that the market consists of these underlying companies. And in fact, this has partly been driven by things like ETFs or index funds where you buy the entire market. And the mantra has become all about low-cost, low-fee products. The various rating agencies that are out there push this. This is all throughout the financial newspapers and journals, which reduce investing to buy the whole market but simply find it at these very low-cost, low-fee products. This very naturally has made investing commoditized and depersonalized. People aren't even thinking about what it is that they're owning since they're buying everything. Thus, we can say that most people don't know what they own. In fact, if you ask most individual investors, do you know what you own? They'll say, I have no idea. And if you ask many financial advisors, what do they own? They'll say, I have no idea. So I think it's a very empirically verifiable statement to see how far we've fallen from understanding this original purpose of what investing was intended to be. This is nicely captured by William Cavanaugh, who's a professor at DePaul University, who says, retirement accounts tend to just go into mutual funds, where not only do I have any idea how the companies that I have stock in are being operated, I don't even know what companies I have stock in. And they're run by an elite of managers whose one preoccupation is with increasing the bottom line. A very extreme example of this comes from Cliff Asness. Cliff Asness is a very widely respected quant fund manager who was one of the founders of AQR Capital Management. And he is often lauded as a pioneer in quantitative investment management. And notice this statement that he made at a Morningstar conference where he said, I pride myself on not knowing what's in our portfolios. So this is, I think, a very powerful exemplar of this phenomenon taken to the final stages where we are seeing that in the end people are almost celebrating this ignorance of not even knowing what they own. Because for them, it's not even important. Investing is so far divorced from the individual companies that in this case, he's rejoicing almost in this ignorance and this lack of connection between capital and the companies that it is flowing to support. This is also illustrated with the author Kurt Vonnegut. Many of you will know Kurt Vonnegut. He was a celebrated novelist. His most famous book is called Slaughterhouse-Five. I remember I had to read this book when I was in high school. It's a very vivid book. He actually fought in the Battle of the Bulge, and he was captured there in Germany, and he was sent to a military camp in Dresden. The Allied forces ultimately bombed Dresden, and when the bombing was over, one of his jobs was to gather the corpses of those who perished in the bombing. And Slaughterhouse-Five is basically a semi-fictional account of someone who has gone through an experience like that, and it's told in a very poignant manner. Well, there was a biography that was written about Kurt Vonnegut that pointed out that while he became an ardent champion of peace, unbeknownst to him, he was actually investing in a major chemical company that was actually manufacturing napalm. So here we have, on the one side, an author who is deeply passionate about raising concern, raising awareness about the horrors of war, trying to get people to consider well the gravity of what war represents and trying to promote peace. And on the other hand, owning a company that's making napalm. And I think this disconnect is very obvious here and not uncommon. So this illustration of Kurt Vonnegut simply illustrates a problem that both investors and advisors have. So for your clients as financial advisors, many of your clients unwittingly become the owners of companies that are at odds with their own lives because of the decisions of these fund managers. And these can be deeply held, deeply cherished values. And so this is an opportunity for us to help rectify that. And for advisors, many advisors are recommending portfolios of companies that are at odds with their own values and commitments. And for that reason, many advisors can't have that same level of conviction because they're pushing something that ultimately isn't where their heart is really at. They can't truly get behind it and they waver. We often get the question, it's probably, I would say, the number one question that I've gotten over the years is how I, as a physician, got into investing and helping start a mutual fund company. This is a photograph from when I was much younger, while I was still working in the medical world. I was doing an MD PhD program at Harvard Med School, and as part of the MD PhD program, I received a stipend. It was roughly $10,000 a year. Not a lot of money, but I was single at the time and didn't have a lot of expenditures, and so I was able to save a portion of that. And so I looked at a number of mutual funds, and what I found was that as you look at the top 10 holdings of a mutual fund, which you can see when you get the glossy literature for it or when you go online, I could see the top 10 holdings, and I could see that these top 10 holdings were not companies that I felt comfortable owning because of my values, because of my own faith. And so I could not bring myself to invest in these companies. And my roommate at the time, he was doing his PhD in economics at Harvard, and he advised me to learn how to invest myself. And so he gave me a few books, one of which was by Peter Lynch, and I devoured the book. I thought it was absolutely fascinating and decided to use what I learned from Peter Lynch, who I still consider as a mentor of mine, and implement that in investing. And we created Eventide, a handful of us, to open up this space in investment management where real discernment takes place around ownership and the common good, and to make a way to invest in companies that create value. We believe this is a tremendous opportunity for you as a financial advisor to offer to your clients companies that they can be proud to talk about, companies that are harmonious with their values. This also provides you with the opportunities to make recommendations that you can be proud to talk about. You know, we believe it's very important for you as a financial advisor to have conviction around what you own so that you can be proud of what you're doing. You can look yourself in the mirror and be glad that you are advancing the global common good, advancing your own values with what you're doing day in and day out. And so, in conclusion, we want to say that there's really one first, most basic question of investing, and it's not a financial question. The first, most basic question of investing should simply be, what kind of companies do I want to own? If you get this question right, the rest of investing becomes much more straightforward. This type of confidence that comes from answering this question first becomes the foundation of being able to analyze companies later from a position of integrity.